Hello, everyone. How are you? Almost end of the conference. Vape technology. I'm going to jump into the conversation right away. We don't have too much time, if I can figure this out. Next. So when you talk about vapes, people usually think about liquid pens, e-cigarettes. I want to basically talk about the categories. We have dry herb vaporizers and we have liquid pens. In our industry, in cannabis industry, you do have quite a big usage of the electronic cigarettes as vape pens. Basically, it's liquids put into. I have a hard time calling them actual vaporizers because they vaporize some of the liquids inside and they also aerosolize some of it because they expose them to a lot of heat. But our conversation is not about this technology. Let me just make this statement. There's tons of room for improvement in this specific area. We have seen a few new products come into the market, like Humboldt, like Pax Era, that has innovated a few things, and I'm looking forward to see more, basically, more innovation in this space specifically. What we're going to talk about is more the dry herb vaporizers. They can be desktop and they can be handheld. So a question for you. How many of you own a handheld or desktop vaporizer? No. Any desktop or handheld vaporizers. How many of you use that, let's say, a few times a month? Okay. Great. How many of you have the vape pens, the ones we talked about earlier? And I assume that you use it more than a few times a month? Yes? Yes? Okay. Great. And how many of you tried vaporizers and did not like them? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to know my audience. Right. So there are many different kinds of vaporizers. And we're going to geek out about the technology a little bit. That's what I'm here for. And please interrupt me if you have any questions. I'm going to try to run through it fast so we can have Q&A. But if you want to have any questions, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. So it was interesting how we were invited to talk at a TED conference in Berlin. It was a small group, but they were very curious about what we did. And they were clueless about cannabis and vaporizers. They just said, you know, they know what cannabis is, but for them it was just a recreational thing that the stoners did. And I stole a slide from that one. We spoke there, and you know, the question was like, we had to talk about not just vaporizers, the whole thing. Like, what are we doing exactly? And what do we represent? What do we want to represent? And it's just not vaporizers, not just Firefly. I think overall, us all together here, we do represent some of these things. So I want to just go through it quickly, and then we will talk about some of them. So pioneering technology. We definitely have to understand the technology to be able to understand the cannabis and to be able to deliver what's in the plant. Scientific research. Being informed and educated is very important for us to be able to work with patients, with customers, consumers, being able to improve the product, being able to innovate, discovering the whole plant as medicine. That's definitely something Firefly likes to talk about, and that's one of our main things. Healthier alternatives to smoking. We will not make a medical claim. We don't have the medical license yet, but there are enough studies out there that shows you that vaping is better than smoking. You're not combusting, you're not taking those things into your lungs. Economic impact. It's great to take people out of the black market and bringing them to the regular economy, basically. We are part of it. And it's also, you know, being able to reach out to more patients and being able to cure more people is also helping everybody, the economy and the patients. Breaking barriers and challenging the stigma. That's an important one, actually, because a lot of people who haven't touched cannabis, that they want to touch cannabis or they're interested, they still have that perception of cannabis in their minds. So when you have a device like Firefly, it's just really high-tech device, comes with an app, and it does all these great things in their opinions. It eases them into actually consuming cannabis. I was talking to Nadav at Ibna, I love what they do, and he actually emphasized that, yes, like for the older patients especially, a device like Firefly does open their minds, does help them to change their perception. But it's more than that. It's more than just the users. It's more about reaching out to the larger audiences and talking about cannabis via the vaporizers. Because press loves to talk about it. Press is interested. We have a good story. So the more we can talk to press, get them engaged, the better for everybody to understand and challenge, actually, and ask questions. Personal freedoms, that's a personal thing for us. You need to be able to make your choice. You're an adult, and the more educated you are, the better you are off to be able to make your decisions. And cultural change, of course. So we said pioneering technology. What is the pioneering technology? So the idea about Firefly, it's different by design. The technology is basically the technology is around the plant itself, and the whole product is designed thinking about what the plant is, or understanding what the plant has to offer, and trying to understand how to get the most out of the plants, which we're going to get into in a second. But who and why? Good friends of mine, Mark and Sasha. Mark spent about 6 years at Apple as a design manager. The last project was the OS, the desktop platform. That's what he managed. And Sasha is a brilliant computer scientist. He worked at Jupyter Networks for a little bit. He worked on supercomputers, so he did the software at with Firefly. Believe it or not, we have a lot of software in Firefly to make sure that we don't combust the plant, but yet we are able to optimize the temperatures for each setting and each draw that you're taking out of it. And I joined them not like right after I saw Firefly 1, basically. I knew that they were working on it, and my background is I developed probably around 80 products and launched about 10 brands. And I need to say that quite a bit of them failed, but I was fortunate that I ran a company and I was successful enough that I was able to pursue this project. And I'm sure many of you have faced it before. I was fascinated with what they've done with the concept of Firefly 1, and I just went after it. I just didn't see any of the bigger challenges, even though I failed enough times. So we thought that it was an easy task to be able to bring such a great product to the market, but it wasn't. Some people will say that we are successful. We sell in about 13 countries. We've got good recognition. It's an amazing product. We have a lot of happy customers, but there's still a lot of work to be done. But it's the journey, right? It's the journey what matters. So let's talk about the whole plant let's not talk about it, actually. I think if there's one audience that don't need to talk about it, is this audience. We all understand that the different terpenes and cannabinoids and actually the molecules all work together in influencing your systems. And the question is, how do you get the most out of the plant? You have many different, these are just some examples. There are so many different molecules in the plant. Each plant is different, and there's different vaporization temperatures. And how do you get all of them out? That was the question when Mark and Sasha initially started designing Firefly. That was the question they wanted to answer. So let's get a little bit technical. So there's two types of heating technologies, conduction versus convection, and sometimes people mix them. Basically, conduction is heating through contact. Think about an oven. So you have an oven, and you heat up the oven. And when you heat up the oven, the ingredients inside naturally heat along with the oven. So that is the main technology that is out there right now. I'm going to grab a Firefly. Basically, all the vaporizers in the market right now, they use the same typical technology of heating up an oven. You hit a button, and the oven heats up. It heats up to whatever, 180 degrees, 190 degrees, whatever your setting is. Yeah, you have a question? PAX, Crafty, Volcano, almost every single vaporizer you can imagine out there, they use the oven technology. And the way to know that is when you turn on the vaporizer, If you put your finger in the oven, you shouldn't be able to put your finger actually. You'll burn your finger because you're heating up the oven. So when you're packing it, you have to make sure that you grind your cannabis really well, and you have to pack it really well because it's heating through convection, heating through touching. So to be able to get the most out of it, you have to make sure there's the maximum amount of contact. So that is the concept of the convection. Oops. And then there's the convection. We went, I think, a little too far. I don't know if you guys can see the Firefly in the camera. So with Firefly, basically, when I touch, I'm initiating the heating elements. The heating element is a coil underneath. And the coil, let's just talk about the coil for a second. It's a proprietary coil that we make in the United States. And the idea of this coil is it's made out of a special alloy that doesn't age with heating cycles. What that means is it's not releasing any microparticles into the air, and most of the Chinese vaporizers that you have in the market, they will break after a while. And the reason that they break after a while is because they get thinner. And the reason they're getting thinner is because they're exposed to too much heat, and they are just releasing particles. And unfortunately, those particles are released into your lungs. So that's why it's important that you try to buy the better quality coils or better quality vaporizers. So this coil goes up to 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's the coil you will see underneath. And I have it turned on. And with Firefly, I can open it up and I can put my finger into the bowl. So the idea here is that we are not heating up the bowl. The idea is like whatever content is in there only heats up when you're inhaling. So it only heats up through air, which is convection. In our case, it's dynamic convection because we have a lot of software in the Firefly. But why does it matter? I mean, okay, so you understand like heating by air versus heating by contact. Why does it matter? But this is the design. If you couldn't see it, these are the air intakes. So you draw the air through here. It goes through the bowl. And these two glass parts, when they close, they create the vapor path, and then it comes out. Same thing, dynamic convection, it's through air. I think there's a movie in here. Can we play it? No, it's okay. So why does it matter, right? Why does hot air matter? So the idea is when you're heating up an oven, you're heating up basically to get to those temperatures of 180, 190, which is THC, CBD, and that's what most of the vaporizers are designed for, because that's for good or bad, that's what we thought that mattered, right? But in the meantime, while you're cooking it up, you are actually going through the volatile terpenes and the lower temperature cannabinoids. They start actually vaporizing, and if you open any of them, you'll start smelling it. So the context of the oven vape is you're heating it up, and they're cooking inside, and then you take a sip out of it. Whereas with the convection, you're only heating up as you inhale. So you go from room temperature, and nowadays we're understanding that there are more molecules than terpenes that matter, and they actually so fragile that even at room temperature they start dissipating. So with Firefly, you go from room temperature and you're raising the temperature as you are breathing in. So you basically go through every single temperature. You're going through the entire spectrum. So you're able to get all the terpenes and cannabinoids in one single breath. So we get a lot of anecdotal feedback about Firefly that people swear by the taste. That is because you're able to capture most of the terpenes, if not all of them. Great slide, yeah, as you can see. So quick comparison between conduction and convection. You can imagine this as the heat up time. So while you're heating up, this is what starts vaporizing actually. And green is when you're inhaling. And this red area is actually when you're not inhaling. So if you take a hit out of a vaporizer, a conduction vaporizer, and if you do not inhale it, in the meantime, it keeps cooking. You can turn off the machine, but you cannot turn off the oven. It's like cooking with electric stove. You cannot just turn down the electric stove. It takes a while until it turns off. So the best way to utilize the oven-style vaporizers is you take hits back to back. You try to minimize this area, or if it's great for group settings, you can just keep passing it on if you want the most out of it. And they're very practical. We'll talk about that in a second. Whereas in convection heating, this is dynamic convection. This is when you're inhaling, you're getting everything, and as soon as you stop, it cools down immediately. I can put my finger back in there right after I take a hit. And you don't have to, like, it doesn't matter how long of a break you take in between, you're not going to go through any material. The material is not going to cook in the meantime. So advantages of convection is the whole plant experience. It's on demand. You can just take one puff at a time, and you can put it down. But it requires a longer and deeper inhalations, but you'll really get to enjoy all those flavors when you take these deep breaths. And advantages of conduction is they're super energy efficient. This requires 10 times more power because you have to really bring up the temperature very quickly. They're great for sessions. So if you're in a group, those are great for groups. And they're relatively easy to use because they're very similar to smoking at joints or smoking out of a vape pen. You just take a little sip out of them. Question? Good question. So the question is, can you use concentrates with the convection technology? The answer is yes, you can. Let's see how much time I have.
You finished.
I'm finished. Okay.
You're 5 minutes over.
I'm finished. Well, I thought that I had 5 minutes.
No.
All right.
Red means.
All right. So, like to sum it up, why does vape technology matter? It's important to be in the media to inspire the conversation about cannabis and its consumption, opening the cannabis subject to brand new people's eyes. Encourage scientific studies. So if anybody is here who wants to do clinical studies, who are in the extraction business, who wants to collaborate with us, I look forward to talking to you. Inspire social change and economical impact. So I'm wrapping it up, so let's not talk too much more. This is some of the examples of the press we got, so I'm very happy to be able to say that, press at least is talking about vaporizers, which opens the larger conversation about cannabis, actually.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.